making sure I actually had everything right here. Woo! Okay, good. Because that would be really embarrassing if I left it like, I don't know, whatever the heck I was playing before. Well, if we're lucky, if there's any degree of luck or justice in literature, Panurge will get his. Well, I'm not embarrassed by Death Stranding at all, but I'm kind of wishing I would get to the end of it sooner rather than later. But that's a conversation for another time altogether. Woo! Okay, where was I? Oh, actually, right here. I already queued it up. That's where I was. I'd like to tell you about how Panurge consulteth with Epistemon. That would be... I'm always having to calculate Roman numerals. 24. It should not be Death Stranding. Hello, chat. This is on the stream. So yeah, anything you send to my desktop's gonna show up, just so as you knows. Lesson 3! Listen, do Control F5 or something on your browser, okay? Do that first. Yeah, if you don't knock it off, I'm gonna block you on Steam, so... and I don't want to do that. So, knock it off. Thank you. Alright, because no, you just have to do Control F5, really. Plus, there's a little bit of lag. Control F5 forces your browser to totally refresh. So, enough jibber-jabber. Let's get to this, shall we? Well, actually, hang on. Jibber-jabber is the whole point of this exercise. I'm here for the jabbering and the gibbering. All right. Yeah. Because I know anyway, enough recriminations. Onwards! I just punched the air, by the way. Book 3. I know it says chapter 3, but it's book 3. Chapter 24. How Panurge consulteth with Epistemon. Having left the town of Villemer as they were upon their return towards Pantagruel, Panurge, in addressing his discourse to Epistemon, spoke thus. My most ancient friend and gossip, thou seest the perplexity of my thoughts, and knowest many remedies for the removal thereof. Art thou not able to help and succor me? Epistemon, thereupon taking the speech in hand, represented unto Panurge how the open voice and common fame of the whole country did run upon no other discourse but the derision and mockery of his new disguise. Wherefore his counsel unto him was that he would in the first place be pleased to make use of a little hellebore for the purging of his brain of that peccant humour which, through that extravagant and fantastic memory of his, had furnished the people with a too just occasion of flouting and gibing, jeering, and scoffing him, and that next he would resume his ordinary fashion of accoutrement, and go apparelled as he was wont to do. I am, quoth Panurge, my dear gossip Epistemon, of a mind and resolution to marry, but am afraid of being a cuckold, and to be unfortunate in my wedlock. For this cause I have made a vow to young Saint Francis, who at Plessis Latour is much reverenced of all women, earnestly cried unto by them. Wow, that's a lot of industrial noise back there. And with great devotion, for he was the first founder of the confraternity of good men, whom they naturally covet, affect, and long for, to wear spectacles in my cap, and to carry no codpiece in my breeches, until the present inquietude and perturbation of my spirits be fully settled. Truly, quoth Epistemon, that is a pretty jolly vow of 13 to a dozen. It is a shame to you, and I wonder much at it, that you do not return unto yourself, and recall your senses from this, their wild swerving and straying abroad, to that rest and stillness which becomes a virtuous man. This whimsical conceit of yours brings me to the remembrance of a solemn promise made by the shag-haired Argive, who, having in their controversy against the Lacedaemonians for the territory of Thyrea, I guess they were Argives or something, come to think of it, lost the battle which they had hoped should have decided it for their advantage, vowed to carry never any hair on their heads till prealably they had recovered the loss of both their honor and lands. As likewise to the memory of the vow of a pleasant Spaniard named Michael Doris, who vowed to carry in his hat a piece of the shin of his leg, until he should be revenged of him who had struck it off. Yet I do not know which of these two deserveth most to wear a green and yellow hood with a hare's ears tied to it, either the aforesaid vainglorious champion, or that Enguerrand, who, having forgot the art and manner of writing history set down by the Samosatian philosopher, maketh a most tediously long narrative in relation thereof, not unlike this paragraph. For at the first reading of such a profuse discourse, one would think it had been broached for the introducing of a story of great importance and moment concerning the waging of some formidable war, or the notable change and mutation of potent states and kingdoms. Tediously long narrative, I do say. But in conclusion, the world laugheth at the capricious champion, at the Englishmen who had affronted him, as also at their scribbler Enguerrand, which is basically warrior, more driveling at the mouth than a mustard pot. Yeah, take that, mustard pot. The jest and scorn thereof is not unlike to that of the mountain of Horace, which by the poet was made to cry out and lament most enormously as a woman in the pangs and labor of childbirth. At which deplorable and exorbitant cries and lamentations, the whole neighborhood being assembled in expectation to see some marvelous monstrous production, could at last perceive no other but the paltry, ridiculous mouse. Boom! Your mousing, quoth Panurge, will not make me leave my musing why folks should be so frumpishly disposed, seeing I am certainly persuaded that some flout who merit to be flouted at. Yet, as my vow imports, so will I do. It is now a long time since, by Jupiter Philos, a mystic of the translators, surely, we did swear faith and amity to one another. Give me your advice, Billy, and tell me your opinion freely. Should I marry or no? God's sake, man. Truly, quoth Epistemon, the case is hazardous, and the danger is so eminently apparent that I find myself too weak and insufficient to give you a punctual and peremptory resolution therein. And if ever it was true that judgment is difficult in matters of the medicinal art, what was said by Hippocrates of Lango, it is certainly so in this case. True it is that in my brain there are some rolling fancies. Yeah, and he's never going to decide for himself. Imagine going to a restaurant with this guy, by means whereof somewhat may be pitched upon a seeming efficacy to the disentangling your mind of those dubious apprehensions wherewith it is perplexed. But they do not thoroughly satisfy me. Some of the Platonic sect affirm that whosoever is able to see his proper genius may know his own destiny. I understand not their doctrine, nor do I think that you adhere to them. There is a palpable abuse. I have seen the experience of it in a very curious gentleman of the country of Estangur. This is one of the points. There is yet another not much better. If there were any authority now in the oracles of Jupiter Ammon, of Apollo and Lebedia, Delphos, Delos, Syrah, Patara, Tegris, Praneste, Lycia, Colophon, or in the Castalian fountain, near Antiochia in Syria, between the Branchidians, of Bacchus and Dodona, of Mercury and Phares, near Patras, of Apis in Egypt, of Serapis in Canope, of Faunus in Manelia, and Albunia near Tivoli, of Tiresias in the Orchomenus, of Mopsus in Cilicia, of Orpheus in Lesbos, and of Trophonius in Leucadia. I would in that case advise you, and possibly not, to go thither for their judgment concerning the design and enterprise you have in hand. But you know that they are all of them become as dumb as so many fishes since the advent of that Saviour King, whose coming to this world hath made all oracles and prophecies to cease. It's Jesus' fault, basically. As the approach of the sun's radiant beams expelleth goblins, bugbears, hobthrushes, bromes, screech-owl mates, night-walking spirits, and Tenebrions. These now are gone. But although they were as yet in continuance and in the same power, rule, and request that formerly they were, yet would not I counsel you to be too credulous in putting any trust in their responses. Too many folks have been deceived thereby. It stands furthermore upon record how Agrippina did charge the fair Lolia with the crime of having interrogated the oracle of Apollo Clarius, to understand if she should be at any time married to the Emperor Claudius, for which cause she was first banished, and thereafter put to a shameful and ignominious death. But, said Panurge, let us do better. The Ogygian Islands are not far distant from the haven of Samalo. Let us, after we have spoken... Let us, after that, we shall have spoken to our king, and make a voyage thither. In one of these 4 isles, to wit, that which hath its primest aspect toward the sun-setting, it is reported, and I have read in good antique and authentic authors, that there reside many soothsayers, fortune-tellers, vaticinators, prophets, and diviners of things to come, that Saturn inhabiteth that place, bound with fair chains of gold, and within the concavity of a golden rock, being nourished with the divine ambrosia and nectar, which are daily in great store and abundance transmitted to him from the heavens. By I do not well know what kind of fowls. It may be that they are the same ravens which in the deserts are said to have fed St. Paul, the first hermit. He very clearly foretelleth unto everyone who is desirous to be certified in the condition of his lot what his destiny will be, and what the future chance the fates have ordained for him. For the Parcae, or weird sisters, do not twist, spin, or draw out a thread, nor yet doth Jupiter perpend, project, or deliberate anything which the good old celestial father knoweth not to the full, even whilst he is asleep. This will be a very summary abbreviation of our labor, if we but hearken unto him a little upon the serious debate and canvassing of this my perplexity. That is, answered Epistemon, a gullery too evident, a plain abuse, and a fib too fabulous. I will not go, not I. I will not go. Dang. I don't know anything about Epistemon, but I honestly wasn't expecting that either. Chapter 25. How Panurge consulteth with Herr Trippa. That doesn't sound very German. Nevertheless, quoth Epistemon, continuing his discourse, I will tell you what you may do. Wow, this paragraph. I will tell you what you may do, if you believe me, before we return to our king. Hard by here, in the brown wheat islands, dwelleth Herr Trippa. You know how by the arts of astrology, geomancy, chiromancy, metopomancy, and others of a like stuff and nature, he foretelleth all things to come. Let us talk a little, and confer with him about your business. Of that, answered Panurge, I know nothing, but of this much concerning him that I am assured, that one day, and that not long since, whilst he was prating to the great king of celestial, sublime, and transcendent things, the lackeys and footboys of the court, upon the upper steps of stairs between 2 doors, jumbled one after another, as often as they listed, his wife, who is passable fair, and a pretty snug hussy. Thus he who seemed very clearly to see all heavenly and terrestrial things without spectacles, who discoursed boldly of adventures past, with great confidence, opened up present cases and accidents, and stoutly professed the presaging of all future events and contingencies, was not able, with all the skill and cunning that he had, to perceive the bum-basting of his wife. Oh, what a word! Whom he reputed to be very chaste, and hath not till this hour got notice of anything to the contrary. Or perhaps he did know and was okay with it. Yet let us go to him, seeing you will have it so, for surely we can never learn too much. They, on the very next ensuing day, came to Herr Trippa's lodging. Panurge, by way of a donative, presented him with a long gown lined all through with wolf skins, with a short sword mounted with a gilded hilt and covered with a velvet scabbard, and with 50 good single angels. Then in a familiar and friendly way did he ask of him his opinion touching the affair. At the very first, Herr Trippa, looking on him very wistly in the face, said unto him, Thou hast the metoposcopy and physiognomy of a cuckold. Straight out. I say, of a notorious and infamous cuckold. With this, casting an eye upon Panurge's right hand in all the parts thereof, he said, This rugged draught which I see here, just under the mount of Jove, which never yet but in the hand was what? With this, casting an eye upon Panurge's right hand in all the parts thereof, he said, This rugged draught which I see here, just under the mount of Jove, was never yet but in the hand of a cuckold. Afterwards, he with a white lead pen swiftly and hastily drew a number of diverse kinds of points, which by the rules of geomancy he coupled and joined together, then said, Truth itself is not truer than that it is certain thou wilt be a cuckold a little after thy marriage. That being done, he asked of Panurge the horoscope of his nativity, which was no sooner by Panurge tended unto him, than that, erecting a figure, he very promptly and speedily formed and fashioned a complete fabric of the houses of heaven in all their parts, whereof when he had considered the situation and the aspects in their triplicities, he fetched a deep sigh and said, I have clearly enough already discovered unto you the fate of your cuckoldry, which is unavoidable, you cannot escape it. And here I have got of new a further assurance thereof, so that I may now heartily pronounce and affirm, without any scruple or hesitation at all, that thou wilt be a cuckold. That furthermore thou wilt be beaten by thine own wife, and that she will purloin, filch, and steal of thy goods from thee. For I find the seventh house, in all its aspects, of a malignant influence, and every one of the planets threatening thee with disgrace, according as they stand seated toward one another, in relation to the horn signs of Aries, Taurus, and Capricorn. In the fourth house, I find Jupiter in a decadence, as also in a tetragonal aspect to Saturn, associated with Mercury. Thou wilt be soundly peppered, my good honest fellow, I warrant thee. I will be, answered Panurge. A plague rot thee, thou old fool and dotting sot, how graceless and unpleasant thou art. When all cuckolds shall be at a general rendezvous, thou shouldst be their standard-bearer. But whence comes this Siron worm betwixt these two fingers? This, Panurge said, putting the forefinger of his left hand betwixt the fore and middle finger of the right, which he thrust out towards Herr Trippa, holding them open after the manner of two horns, and shutting into his fist his thumb with the other fingers. I think he just flicked them off in a really fancy way here. Then, in turning to Epistemon, he said, Lo, here the true Olus of Martial, who addicted and devoted himself wholly to the observing the miseries, crosses, and calamities of others, whilst his own wife, in the interim, did keep an open body house. This varlet is poorer than ever was Iris, and yet he is proud, vaunting, arrogant, self-conceited, overweening, and more insupportable than 17 devils. And I just want to add, it does take one to know one. In one word, Chalazon, which term of old was applied to the like beggarly strutting coxcombs. Come, let us leave this mad pash bedlam, this harebrained fop, and give him leave to rave and dose his bellyful with his private and intimately acquainted devils, who, if they were not the very worst of all infernal fiends, would never have deigned to serve such a knavish barking cur as this is. He hath not learned the first precept of philosophy, which is, Know thyself, for whilst he braggeth and boasteth that he can discern the least mote in the eye of another, he is not able to see the huge block that puts out the sight of both his eyes. This is such another polypragmon as is by Plutarch described. He is of the nature of the Lamian witches, who in foreign places, in the houses of strangers, in public, and amongst the common people, had a sharper and more piercing inspection into their affairs than any lynx, but at home, in their own proper dwelling mansions, were blinder than mold warps. Burn! And saw nothing at all. For their custom was, at their return from abroad, when they were by themselves in private, to take their eyes out of their head, from whence they were as easily removable as a pair of spectacles from their nose, and to lay them up in a wooden slipper, which for that purpose did hang behind the door of their lodging. Panurge had no sooner done speaking when Herr Trippa took into his hand a tamarisk branch. In this, quoth Epistemon, he doth very well write, and if like an artist, for Nisander calleth it the divinatory tree. Have you a mind, quoth Herr Trippa, to have the truth of the matter yet more fully and amply disclosed unto you by pyromancy, by aeromancy, whereof Aristophanes in his clouds maketh great estimation, by hydromancy, by lasanomancy, of old and prime respect amongst the Assyrians, and thoroughly tried by Hermolaus Barbarus? Come hither, and I will show thee in this platter full of fair fountain water thy future wife, lettering and circumperizing it with two swaggering ruffians, one after the other. Cuckomancy! I love it. Herr Trippa, going on his discourse, said, by cataptromancy, likewise held in such account by the Emperor Didius Julianus, by that means thereof he ever and anon foresaw all that which at any time did happen or befall unto him. Thou shalt not need to put on thy spectacles, for in a mirror thou wilt see her as clearly and manifestly nembrundiated and billibrodering it, as if I should show it in the fountain of the temple of Minerva near Patras. By cosinomancy, the most religiously observed of old amidst the ceremonies of the ancient Romans, let us have a sieve and shears, and thou shalt see the devils. By alphitomancy, cried up by Theocritus in his Pharmasutria. By alentomancy, mixing the flour of wheat with oatmeal. By astragalomancy, whereof I have the plots and models all at hand ready for the purpose. By tyromancy, whereof we make some proof in a great Brehemont cheese, which I keep here by me. By gyromancy, if thou shouldst turn round circles, thou mightst assure thyself from me that thou would fall always on the wrong side. By sternomancy, which maketh nothing for thy advantage, for thou hast an ill-proportioned stomach. By libinomancy, for the which we shall need but a little frankincense. By gastromancy, which kind of ventral fatiloquency was for a long time used in Ferrara by Lady Giacomo Rodogina, the Engastramithian prophetess. Is that by farting? By cephalomancy, often practiced amongst the High Germans, in their boiling of an ass's head upon burning coals. By ceromancy, whereby the means of wax dissolved into water, thou shalt see the figure, portrait, and lively representation of thy future wife, and of her frediatory belly-thumping blades. By capnomancy, oh, the gallantest and most excellent of all secrets. By axionomancy, we want only a hatchet and a jetstone to be laid together upon a quick fire of hot embers. Oh, how bravely Homer was versed in the practice hereof towards Penelope's suitors. By onimancy, for that we have oil and wax. By tephromancy, thou wilt see the ashes thus aloft dispersed, exhibiting thy wife in a fine posture. By botanomancy, for the nonce I have some few leaves in reserve. By sycomancy, O divine art in fig tree leaves. By ichthyomancy, in ancient times so celebrated, and put in use by Tiresias and Polydamas, with the like certainty of event as was tried of old at the Dina ditch within that grave consecrated to Apollo, which is in the territory of the Lycians. It was that's exactly my thought. And I learned a word, so thank you. By anthropomancy, by coiromancy, let us have a great many hogs, and thou shalt have the bladder of one of them. By chiromancy, as the bean is found in the cake at the Epiphany Vigil. By anthropomancy, practiced by the Roman Emperor Heliogabalus, It is somewhat irksome, but thou wilt endure it well enough, seeing thou art destined to be a cuckold. By a sibylline stitchomancy, by onomantomancy. How do they call thee? Chaw-turd, quoth Panurge. Or yet by electromancy. If I should here with a compass draw around, and in looking upon thee, and considering thy lot, divide the circumference thereof into 24 equal parts, then form a letter of the alphabet upon every one of them, and lastly posit a barley corn or two upon each of these so disposed letters, I durst promise upon my faith and honesty that, if a young virgin cock be permitted to range amongst and athwart them, he should eat only the grains which are set and placed upon these letters, A, C, U, C, K, O, L, D, T, H, O, U, S, H, A, L, T, B, E. A cuckold thou shalt be. And that, as fatidically as under the Emperor Valens, most perplexly desirous to know the name of him who should be a successor to the empire, the cock, vaticinating and electromantic, ate up the pickles that were posited on the letters T-H-E-O-D. Or, for the more certainty, will you have a trial of your fortune by the art of aruspiciny, by augury, or by extispiciny? By turdispiciny, quoth Panurge. I agree. Or yet by the mystery of necromancy? I will, if you please, suddenly set up again and revive someone lately deceased, as Apollonius of Tyane did to Achilles, and the Pythoness in the presence of Saul, which body so raised up and requickened, will tell us the sum of all you shall require of him. No more, no less than, at the invocation of Erichtho, a certain defunct person foretold to Pompey the whole progress and issue of the fatal battle fought in the Pharsalian fields. Or if you be afraid of the dead, as commonly all cuckolds are, I will make use of the faculty of sciomancy. That was one hell of an insult. I mean, the whole lot of that. Here's all the different sciences I'm going to use to prove that your wife is getting somebody else's dick. And now for some rage. Seriously. Go, get thee gone, quoth Panurge, thou frantic ass, to the devil, and be buggered, filthy bardatio that thou art, by some Albanian, for a steeple-crowned hat. Why did the devil didst not thou counsel me as well to hold an emerald, or the stone of a hyena under my tongue, or to furnish and provide myself with tongues of whoops, and hearts of green frogs, or to eat of the liver and milt of some dragon, to the end that by those means I might, at the chanting and chirping of swans and other fowls, understand the substance of my future lot and destiny, as did of old the Arabians in the country of Mesopotamia. 15 brace of devils seize upon the body and soul of this horned renegado, miscreant cuckold, the enchanter, witch, and sorcerer of Antichrist, to all the devils of hell. Let us return towards our king. I am sure he will not be well pleased with us if he once comes to get notice that we have been in the kennel of this muffled devil. I repent my being come hither. I would willingly dispense with 100 nobles and 14 yeomans, on condition that he who not long since did blow in the bottom of my breeches should instantly with his squirting spittle illuminate his moustaches. O Lord God, now, how the villain hath besmoked me with vexation and anger, with charms and witchcraft, and with a terrible coil and stir of infernal and Tartarian devils. The devil take him! Say amen, and let us go drink. I shall not have any appetite for my victuals, how good cheer soever I make these 2 days to come, hardly these 4. Oh my God. Now we have a list. Chapter 26. How Panurge consulteth with Friar John of the Funnels. Panurge was indeed very much troubled in mind and disquieted at the words of Herr Treppa, and therefore, as he passed by the little village of Huims, after he had made his address to Friar John, in pecking at, rubbing, and scratching his own left ear, he said unto him, Keep me a little jovial and merry, my dear and sweet bully, for I find my brains altogether metagrabolized and confounded. and my spirit in a most dunsical puzzle at the bitter talk of this devilish, hellish, damned fool. Hearken, my dainty cod. Mellow sea, varnished sea, resolute sea, lead-colored sea, renowned sea, cabbage-like sea, knurled sea, matted sea, courteous sea, suborned sea, genitive sea, fertile sea, desired sea, gigantal sea, whizzing sea, stuffed sea, oval sea, neat sea, speckled sea, claustral sea, common sea, finely metalled sea. That's the one for me. I want that one. Virile sea. Yeah, I'll still take finely metalled over that one. Brisk sea. It's there. I'm reading it. I think you're going to go crazy. You're going to join me in crazy. Arabian-like sea. Staid sea. Quick sea. Trussed up greyhound-like sea. Massive sea. Bear-like sea. Manual sea. Partitional sea. Mounted sea. Absolute sea. Patronymic sea. Sleeked sea. Well-set sea. Cockney sea. Diapered sea. Gemel sea. Aroma curated sea. Spotted sea. Turkish sea. You can join me in craziness sea. Robust sea. Master sea. Burning sea. Appetizing sea. Oromercurated sea is for you. I think C is for something that only men have, though, so we're going to have some difficulty sorting that one out. Seated sea, thwacking sea, succorable sea, lusty sea, urgent sea, redoubtable sea, jupid sea, handsome sea, affable sea, milked sea, prompt sea, memorable sea, calfetted sea, fortunate sea, palpable sea, raised sea, boxwood sea, barbable sea, odd sea, Latin sea, tragical sea, steeled sea. I don't know. You know, like, maybe the context will be clear, sea, or maybe it won't, sea. Unbridled sea, transpontine sea, stale sea, hooked sea, digestive sea, orange tawny sea, researched sea, active sea, embroidered sea, encompassed sea, vital sea, glazed sea, strouting out sea, magistral sea, interlarded sea, jolly sea, monocle sea, burger-like sea. I could go for a burger. Lively sea, subtle sea, empowdered sea, gerundive sea. I think I may take that one as number 2. I think I might like a gerundive sea. Hammering sea, ebonized sea, frankened sea, clashing sea, braciliated sea, polished sea, tingling sea, organized sea, powdered beef sea. I think that's my least favorite one so far. Usual sea, passable sea, positive sea, exquisite sea, trunkified sea, spared sea, trim sea, furious sea, bolded sea, succulent sea, packed sea, lascivious sea, factious sea, hooded sea, gluttonous sea, clammy sea, fat sea, bolting sea, new vamped sea, high-priced sea, snorting sea, improved sea, requisite sea, pilfering sea, mauling sea. Oh, fuck me, sea. Jesus wept. All right, where is mauling sea? Okay, there it is. Good enough. Lacod sea, shaking sea, sounding sea, hand-filling sea. Well, that sounds nice. Bobbing sea, battled sea, insuperable sea, chiveted sea, burly sea, agreeable sea, fumbling sea, seditious sea. I think that was my rap name. Formidable sea, topsy-turvying sea, Wardian sea rather, profitable sea, raging sea, protective sea, notable sea, piled up sea, twinkling sea. Could you imagine just translating this? Just, musculous sea, filled up sea, able sea, subsidiary sea, manly sea, algoristical sea. Yeah, that's right. I'm still using, that's still my secondary name. Subsidiary sea, manly sea, algoristical sea, satiric sea, idle sea, odiferous sea, repercussive sea, membrous sea, prankit sea, convulsive sea, strong sea, jocund sea, restorative sea, twin sea, routing sea, masculinating sea, belaboring sea, purloining sea, incarnative sea, gentle sea, frolic sea, sigillative sea, stirring sea, wagging sea, sallying sea, confident sea, ruffling sea, plump sea, nimble sea, jumbling sea, thundering sea, round-headed sea, rumbling sea, lettering sea, figging sea, thumping sea, fulminating sea, helpful sea, bumping sea, sparkling sea, spruce sea, cringeling sea, ramming sea, plucking sea, berumpling sea, lusty sea, ramage sea, jogging sea. Well, that one's a healthy sea, I guess. Household sea, fine sea, nobbing sea, pretty sea, fierce sea, toozing sea, astrolabian sea, brawny sea, tumbling sea, algebraical sea, comped sea, fambling sea, venused sea, repaired sea, overturning sea, aromatizing sea, soft sea, shooting sea, tricksy sea. That's a good one. Wild sea, killeting sea, pyard sea, renewed sea, jagged sea, gaillard sea. AX plus BY plus C. C. Actually, missed opportunity. Very close, though. And hopefully people can read that. Broaching. So quaint sea, pinked sea, broaching sea, starting sea. Starting sea, arsiversing sea, adel sea, fleshy sea, polished sea, syndicated sea, auxiliary sea, slashed sea, hammed sea, stuffed sea, clashing sea, leisurely sea, well-fed sea. Oh, thank God. Wagging sea, cut sea, flourished sea, script-like sea, smooth sea, follow sea, and cremastered sea, depending sea, sudden sea, bouncing sea, independent sea, graspful sea, leveling sea, lingering sea, swill pow sea, fly flap sea. That was actually one of my favorite songs from God Hand, Fly Flap. That's a good joke for the British people. Adelsea is a place in the UK. Rapping sea, crushing sea. I'm going to totally put that as a Bisky post. Crushing sea. Rapping sea was also for the very early era of just after the Sugar Hill Gang. He was the first one to invent the whole, yo, I'm whatever. And yo, I'm rapping sea, and I'm here to say I can list seas in a better way. That thing. Crushing sea. Perine Tejminal sea. Reverend sea. Creaking sea. Squat couching sea. Nodding sea. Dilting sea. Short hung sea. Disseminating sea. Ready sea. The hypogastrian sea. Affecting sea. Vigorous sea. Witness-bearing sea. Affected sea. Skulking sea. Testigerous sea. Grappled sea. Superlative sea. Instrumental sea. How's your sanity? You missed the length and breadth of that list, and it was quite a long list, see? Ha. My heart-caboozing cod and buttock-stirring ballock. Friar John, my friend, I do carry a singular respect unto thee, and honour thee with all my heart. Thy counsel I hold for a choice and delicate morsel, therefore have I reserved it for the last bit. Give me thy advice freely, I beseech thee. Should I marry or no? Friar John very merrily, and with a spriteful cheerfulness, made this answer unto him. Marry, in the devil's name. Why not? What the devil else should thou do but marry? Take thee a wife, and furbish her harness to some tune, swinge her skin coat as thou wert beating on stockfish, and let the repercussion of thy clapper from her resounding metal make a noise as if a double peal of chiming bells were hung at the cremasters of thy bollocks. Damn, son! Yes, he actually, you missed the part where he went to go see some guy who mastered all kinds of fortune telling, who just basically said, you're going to be a cuckold, and I'd show you, but cuckolds are afraid of some of these. Just basically straight up calling him a cuckold. It was kind of impressive. As I say, Mary, so do I understand that thou shouldst fall to work as speedily as may be. Yea, my meaning is thou oughtst to be so quick and forward therein, as on this same very day, before sunset, to cause proclaim thy banns of matrimony, and make provision of bedsteads, by the blood of a hog's pudding. Till when wouldst thou delay the acting of a husband's part? Dost thou not know, and is it not daily told unto thee, that the end of the world approacheth? We are nearer it by 3 poles and half a fathom than they were 2 days ago. The Antichrist is already born, at least it is so reported by many. The truth is, that hitherto the effects of his wrath have not yet reached further than to the scratching of his nurse and governesses. His nails are not sharp enough as yet, nor have his claws attained to their full growth. He is little. Cusat, nos convivimus multiplicimera. It is written so, and it is holy stuff, I warrant you. The truth whereof is like to last as long as a sack of corn may be had for a penny, and a puncheon of pure wine for 3 pence. Wouldst thou be content to be found with thy genitories full in the day of judgment? Dum venerit judicari? Thou hast, quoth Panurge, a right, clear, and neat spirit, Friar John, my metropolitan cod. Thou speakest in very deed pertinently and to purpose. That belike was the reason which moved Leander of Abydos in Asia, whilst he was swimming through the Hellespontic Sea to make a visit to a sweetheart hero of Cestus in Europe, to pray unto Neptune and all the other marine gods thus. Now whilst I go, have pity on me, and at my back returning drown me. I mean, this is a guy who just wants to get it on, so it's like, you know, Friar John's got the right of it. Stop worrying about it and get it on. He was loth, it seems, to die with his cods overgorged. He was to be commended. Therefore do I promise that from henceforth no malefactor shall by justice be executed within my jurisdiction of Salmigondinois, who shall not, for a day or 2 at least, be permitted to culbut and foraminate onocrotal wise, that there remain not in all his vessels to write a Greek Y. Such a precious thing should not be foolishly cast away. He will perhaps therewith beget a male, and so depart the more contentedly out of this life, that he shall have left behind him one for one. Chapter 27. How Friar John merrily and sportingly consoleth Panurge. By Saint Rizomer, quoth Friar John, I do advise thee to nothing, my dear friend Panurge, which I would not do myself were I in thy place. Only have a special care, and take good heed thou solder well together the joints of the double-backed and 2-bellied beast, and fortify thy nerves so strongly that there be no discontinuance in the knocks of the Venerian thwagging, else thou art lost, poor soul. For if there passed long intervals betwixt the priaprising feats, and thou make an intermission of too long a time, that will befall thee, and which betides the nurses if they desist from giving suck to children. They lose their milk. And if continually thou do not hold thy aspersory tool in exercise, and keep thy mental going, thy lactinian nectar will be gone, and it will serve thee only as a pipe to piss out at, and thy cods for a wallet of lesser value than a beggar's scrip. This is a certain truth I tell thee, friend, and doubt not of it. For myself have seen the sad experiment thereof in many, who cannot now do what they would, because before they did not what they might have done. Blah, 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 blah. Non-usage oftentimes destroys one's right, say the learned doctors of the law. Therefore, my Billy, entertain as well as possibly thou canst that hypogastrian lower sort of troglodytic people, that their chief pleasure may be placed in the case of sempiternal labouring. Give order that henceforth they live not, like idle gentlemen, idly upon their rents and revenues, but that they may work for their livelihood by breaking ground within the Paphian trenches. Nay, truly, answered Panurge, Friar John, my left ballock, I will believe thee, for thou dealest plain with me, and fallest downright square upon the business, without going about the bush with frivolous circumstances and unnecessary reservations. Thou, with the splendor of a piercing wit, hast dissipated all the lowering clouds of anxious apprehensions and suspicions which did intimidate and terrify me. Therefore the heavens be pleased to grant to thee at all she conflicts a stiff standing fortune. Well then, as thou hast said, so will I do. I will in good faith marry. In that point there shall be no failing. I promise thee, and shall have always by me pretty girls clothed with the name of my wife's waiting maids, that, lying under thy wings, thou mayest be knight protector of their sisterhood. Well, they have all kinds of terms for it, and imagine you can find one that would probably pass the filter. But, get it on, and never stop getting it on. Let this serve for the first part of the sermon. Hearken, quoth Friar John, to the oracle of the bells of Varens. What say they? I hear and understand them, quoth Panurge. Their sound is, by my thirst, more uprightly fatidical than that of Jove's great kettles in Dodona. Hearken, take thee a wife, and marry, marry, marry. For if thou marry, thou shalt find good therein, herein a wife thou shalt find good. So marry, marry. I will assure thee that I shall be married. All the elements invite and prompt me to it. Let this word be to thee a brazen wall, by diffidence not to be broken through. As for the second part of this our doctrine, I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think we have to actually flag them. And basically AutoMod will just go, hey, is this permissible? And we say yes or no. Thou seemest in some measure to mistrust the readiness of my paternity in the practicing of my placket racket within the Aphrodisian tennis court at all times fitting, as if the stiff god of gardens were not favorable to me. I pray thee, favor me so much as to believe that I still have him at a beck, attending always to my commandments, docile, obedient, vigorous, and active in all things and everywhere, and never stubborn or refractory to my will or pleasure. I need no more but to let go the reins and slacken the leash, which is the belly point. And when the game is shown unto him, say, Hey, Jack, to thy booty! He will not fail even then to flesh himself upon his prey and tuzzle it to some purpose. Hereby you may perceive, although my future wife were as unsatiable and gluttonous in her voluptuousness and the delights of venery as ever was the Empress Messalina, or yet the Marchioness of Oinchester in England, and I desire thee to give credit to it, that I lack not for what is requisite to overlay the stomach of her lust, but have herewith aboundingly to please her. I am not ignorant that Solomon said, who indeed of that matter speaketh clerk-like and learnedly, as also how Aristotle after him declared for a truth that, for the greater part, the lecher of a woman is ravenous and unsatisfiable. Nevertheless, let such as are my friends who read these passages receive from me for a most real verity, that I for such a Jill have a fit Jack, and that if women's things cannot be satiated, I have an instrument indefatigable, an implement as copious in the giving as can in craving be their vademecums. Do not here produce ancient examples of the paragons of Piardes and offered to match with my testiculatory ability the Priapean prowess of the fabulous fornicators, Hercules, Proculus Caesar, and Mahomet, who in his Alcoran doth vaunt that in his cauds he had the vigor of 60 bully ruffians. But let no zealous Christian trust the rogue. The filthy ribald rascal is a liar. Nor shalt thou need to urge authorities, or bring forth the instance of the Indian prince of whom Theophrastus, Plinius, and Athenius testify, that with the help of a certain herb he was able, and had given frequent experience thereof, to toss his sinewy piece of generation in the act of carnal concupiscence above 70 times in the space of 24 hours. Of that I believe nothing. The number is supposititious, and too prodigally foisted in. Give no faith unto it, I beseech thee, but prithee trust me in this, and thy credulity therein shall not be wronged. For it is true, and probatum est, that my pioneer of nature, the sacred Ithyphalian champion, is of all stiff intruding blades the primest. Come hither, my Balaket, and hearken. Didst thou ever see the monk of Castra's cowl, when in any house it was laid down, whether openly in the view of all, or covertly out of sight of any? Such was the ineffable virtue thereof for exciting and stirring up the people of both sexes unto lechery, that the whole inhabitants and indwellers, not only of that, but likewise of all the circumjacent places thereto, within 3 leagues round it, did suddenly enter into rut, both beasts and folks, men and women, even to the dogs and hogs, rats and cats. I can't even imagine this conversation. I mean, just some guy, your friend coming up to you going, yeah, I'm really good at fucking. I'm the best. Let me give you a long essay about how good I am at this. All right, dude, I think we've gone well into TMI town. I swear to thee that many times there heretofore I have perceived and found in my codpiece a certain kind of energy or efficacious virtue much more irregular and of a greater anomaly than that which I have related. I will not speak to thee either of house or cottage, nor of church or market, but only tell thee that once, at the representation of the Passion, which was acted at St. Maxent, I had no sooner entered within the pit of the theatre, but that forthwith, by the virtue and occult property of it, on a sudden all that were there, both players and spectators, did fall into such an exorbitant temptation of lust, that there was not angel, man, devil, nor deviless upon the place, who would not then have bricoliched it with all their heart and soul. The prompter forsook his copy. He who played Michael's part came down to rights. The devils issued out of hell and carried along with them the most pretty little girls that were there. Yea, Lucifer got out of his fetters. In a word, seeing the huge disorder, I disparked myself forth of that enclosed place, in imitation of Cato the censor, who perceiving, by reason of his presence, the Floralian festivals out of order, withdrew himself. Chapter 28. How Friar John comforteth Panurge in the doubtful matter of cuckoldry. Oh no, there's another list? I understand thee well enough, said Friar John, but time makes all things plain. The most durable marble or porphyry is subject to old age and decay, though for the present thou possibly be not wary of the exercise. Yet is it like I will hear thee confess a few years hence that thy cods hang dangling downward for want of a better truss. I see thee waxing a little hoar-headed already. Thy beard, by the distinction of grey, white, tawny, and black, hath to my thinking the resemblance of a map of the terrestrial globe or geographical chart. Look attentively upon and take inspection of what I show unto thee. Behold there Asia. Here are Tigris and Euphrates. Lo, there Afric. Here is the mountain of the moon. I'm going to wait for this siren to go by. Yonder thou may perceive the fenny march of Nilus. On this side lieth Europe. Dost thou not see the abbey of Thelem? This little tuft, which is altogether white, is the Hyperborean hills. Come on. There were so many fire trucks last night. It was crazy. By the thirst of my thrapple friend, when snow is on the mountains, I say the head and the chin, then there is not any considerable heat to be expected in the valleys and low countries of the codpiece. By the kibes of thy heels, quoth Panurge, thou dost not understand the topics. When snow is on the tops of the hills, lightning, thunder, tempest, whirlwinds, storms, hurricanes, and all the devils of hell rage in the valleys. Wouldst thou see the experience thereof? Go to the territory of the Switzers, and earnestly perpend with thyself there the situation of the lake of Wunderberlich, about 4 leagues distant from Bern, on the Sion side of the land. Thou twittest me with my grey hairs, yet considerest not how I am of the nature of leeks, which with a white head carry a green, fresh, straight, and vigorous tail. The truth is, nevertheless, why should I deny it, that I am now and then discern in myself some indicative signs of old age. Tell this, I prithee, to nobody, but let it be kept very close and secret betwixt us two, for I find the wine much sweeter now, more savoury to my taste, and unto my palate of a better relish than formerly I was wont to do, and withal, besides mine accustomed manner, I have a more dreadful apprehension than I ever heretofore have had of lighting on bad wine. Note and observe that this doth argue and portend I know not what of the west and occident of my time, and signifieth that the south and meridian of mine age is past. But what then, my genial companion? Thou doth but betoken that I will hereafter drink so much the more. That is not, the devil hail it, the thing that I fear, nor is it there where my shoe pinches. The thing that I doubt most, and have the greatest reason to dread and suspect, is, that through some long absence of our King Pantagruel, to whom I must needs bear company, should he go to all the devils of Barathrum, my future wife shall make me a cuckold. This is, in truth, the long and short on't. For I am, by all those whom I have spoke to, menaced and threatened with a horned fortune, and all of them affirm it is the lot to which from heaven I am predestined. Everyone, answered Friar John, that would be a cuckold is not one. If it be thy fate to be hereafter of the number of that horned cattle, then may I conclude with an ergo, thy wife will be beautiful, and ergo thou wilt be kindly used by her. Likewise with this, ergo thou shalt be blessed with the fruition of many friends and well-willers. And finally with this other ergo, thou shalt be saved and have a place in paradise. These are monarchical topics and maxims of the cloister. Thou mayst take more liberty to sin. Thou mayst be more at ease than ever. There will never be the less left for thee, nothing diminished, but thy goods shall increase notably. And if so be it was preordinated for thee, thou wouldst be so impious as to not acquiesce in thy destiny? Totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. But hopefully we get some good stuff yet. Faded sea. Oh, hang on. Speak, thou jaded cod. Faded sea, louting sea, appellant sea, moldy sea, discouraged sea, swagging sea, musty sea, surfeited sea, withered sea, paltry sea, peevish sea, broken-reined sea, senseless sea, translated sea. That's a burn. Psh. Defective sea, foundered sea, forlorn sea. Meow. Defective sea, foundered sea. Oh, I did that already. Crestfallen sea, distempered sea, unsavory sea, fetid sea, bewrayed sea, worm-eaten sea, fleeted sea, inveigled sea, overtoiled sea, cloyed sea, dangling sea, miserable sea, squeezed sea, stupid sea, stupid, steeped sea, resty sea, seedless sea, kneaded with cold water sea, pounded sea, soaked sea, loose sea, sea, coldish sea, hacked sea, fruitless sea, pickled sea, flaggy sea, riven sea, churned sea, scrubby sea, pursy sea, filliped sea, drained sea, fusty sea, singlified sea, hailed sea, jadish sea, begrimed sea, lolling sea, fistulous sea, wrinkled sea, drenched sea, languishing sea, fainted sea, burst sea, maleficiated sea, extenuated sea, stirred up sea, hectic sea, grim sea, mitred sea, worn out sea, wasted sea, peddlingly furnished sea, ill-favored sea, inflamed sea, nuncified sea, unhinged sea, rusty sea, macerated sea, scurfy sea, exhausted sea, paralytic sea, straddling sea, perplexed sea, degraded sea, putrefied sea, unhelved sea, benumbed sea, maimed sea, fizzled sea, bat-like sea, over-lectured sea. I think most people would be happy to have that, actually. Wait till we get to the D's. Leprous sea, fart... Okay, you got me there. Fart-shotten sea, druggly sea, bruised sea, sunburnt sea, mitified sea, spadonic sea, pacified sea, goat-ridden sea, bouty sea, blunted sea, weakened sea, mealy sea, rankling-tasted sea, ass-ridden sea, wrangling sea, rooted-out sea, puff-pasted sea. That seems all right. Gangrened sea, costive sea, Saint Anthonified sea, crust risen sea, hailed on sea, untriped sea, ragged sea, cuffed sea, blasted sea, quelled sea, buffeted sea, cut off sea, braggadocio sea. That was actually 4 paragraphs preceding. That was all braggadocio sea. Worrited sea, beveraged sea, beggarly sea, robbed sea, scarified sea, trepanned sea, neglected sea, dashed sea, bedusked sea, lame sea, slashed sea, emasculated sea, confused sea, enfeebled sea, corked sea, unsavory sea, hoor hunting sea, transparent sea. That's an unintended pun. I'll take that one. Overthrown sea, deteriorated sea, vile sea, bolted sea, chill sea, antedated sea, trod under sea, scrupulous sea, chopped sea, desolate sea, crazed sea, pinked sea, declining sea, tasteless sea, cup glassified sea, stinking sea, sorrowful sea, harsh sea, crooked sea, all right, murdered sea, beaten sea, brabbling sea, matachin like sea, barred sea, rotten sea, besotted sea, abandoned sea, anxious sea, customerless sea, confounded sea, clouted sea, minced sea, loutish sea, tired sea, exculserated sea, borne down sea. I'm gonna make it through. Don't doubt us for a second. Sea. Clouted sea, minced sea, loutish sea, tired sea, exculserated sea, borne down sea, proud sea, patched sea, sparred sea, fractured sea, stupefied sea, abashed sea, melancholy sea, annihilated sea, unseasonable sea, coxcombly sea, which actually seems like a good thing, because they use coxcomb as kind of a positive. Anyway, spent sea, oppressed sea, base sea, foiled sea, grated sea, bleaked sea, anguished sea, falling away sea, detested sea, disfigured sea, small cut sea, diaphanous sea. Seems kind of nice. Disabled sea, disordered sea, unworthy sea, forceless sea, latticed sea, checked sea, censured sea, ruined sea, mangled sea, cut sea, exasperated sea, turned over sea. I know a number of people who are actually curious whether your sea is cut or not cut, so that's kind of an important detail. Rifled sea, rejected sea, harried sea, undone sea, belambed sea, flawed sea, corrected sea, fabricitant sea, froward sea, slit sea, perused sea, ugly sea, skittish sea, emasculated sea, drawn sea, spongy sea, roughly handled sea, riven sea, botched sea, examined sea, distasteful sea, detected sea, cracked sea, hanging sea, jagged sea, wayward sea, broken sea, pining sea, haggled sea, limbered sea. Deformed sea, gleaning sea, effeminate sea, mischieved sea, ill-favored sea, kindled sea, cobbled sea. Nobody wants a burning sea, by the way. Pulled sea, evacuated sea, embased sea, drooping sea, grieved sea, ransacked sea, faint sea, carking sea, despised sea, parched sea, disorderly sea, mangy sea, paltry sea, empty sea, abased sea, cankered sea, disquieted sea, supine sea, void sea, besisted sea, mended sea, vexed sea, confounded sea, dismayed sea, bestunk sea. I love that word. Hooked sea, divorced sea, winnowed sea, unlucky sea, wearied sea, decayed sea, sterile sea, sad sea, disastrous sea, beshitten sea, cross sea, unhandsome sea, appeased sea, vainglorious sea, stummed sea, caitiff sea, poor sea, barren sea, woeful sea, brown sea, wretched sea, unseemly sea, shrunken sea, feeble sea, heavy sea, abhorred sea, cast down sea, weak sea, troubled sea, stopped sea, prostrated sea, scornful sea, kept under sea, uncomely sea, dishonest sea. Oh no, there's more. Stubborn sea, naughty sea, reproved sea, ground sea, laid flat sea, cocketed sea, wretchless sea, suffocated sea, filthy sea, weather-beaten sea, held down sea, shred sea, flayed sea, barked sea, chawned sea, bald sea. I'm going to pause for a moment, and I don't really speak for ladies all around the world, but I suspect most of them would prefer their sea to be bald. Hairless sea, short-winded sea, tossed sea, flapping sea, branchless sea. I think they'd also prefer it to be branchless. Flapping sea, hooded sea, chapped sea, cleft sea, wormy sea, failing sea, meager sea, besisted sea. In his anxiety to swell his catalogue as much as possible, Sir Thomas Urquhart has set this word down twice. Deficiency. Dumpified sea, faulty sea, lean sea, suppressed sea, bemealed sea, consumed sea, hagged sea, mortified sea, used sea, jopped sea, scurvy sea, puzzled sea, havocked sea, bescabbed sea, allayed sea, astonished sea, torn sea, spoiled sea, dulled sea, subdued sea, clagged sea, slow sea, sneaking sea, palsy-stricken sea, plucked up sea, bare sea, amazed sea, constipated sea. I have mixed feelings about that one. Swart sea, bedunced sea, blown sea, smutched sea, extirpated sea, blockified sea, raised up sea, banged sea, pummeled sea, chopped sea, stripped sea, all to be mauled sea, flirted sea, hoary sea, fallen away sea, blamed sea, blotted sea, stale sea, renzy sea, sunken sea, corrupted sea, frowning sea, ghastly sea, beflowered sea, limping sea, unpointed sea, amated sea, ravelled sea, be-blistered sea, blackish sea, rammish sea, wizened sea, underlaid sea, gaunt sea, beggar-plated sea, loathing sea, beskimmered sea, doof sea, ill-filled sea, scraggy sea, clarty sea, bobbed sea, lank sea, lumpish sea, mated sea, swashering sea, abject sea, tawny sea, moiling sea, side sea, wheeled sea, swinking sea, choked up sea, besmeared sea, harried sea, backward sea, hollow sea, tugged sea, prolix sea, pantless sea, toad sea, spotted sea, gizzard sea, misused sea, crumpled sea, demus sea, adamitical sea, frumpled sea, refractory sea. Doof. Actually, the Fatal Ladies didn't want Pom-Pom Sea. It was just a protection from getting bitten during irrumatio. Balak Katso to the devil, my dear friend Panurge. Seeing it is so decreed by the gods, wouldst thou invert the course of the planets and make them retrograde? Wouldst thou disorder all the celestial spheres, blame the intelligences, blunt the spindles, joint the werves, slander the spinning quills, reproach the bobbins, revile the clue bottoms, and finally ravel and untwist all the threads of both the warp and the waft of the weird sister Parse? What a pox to thy bones dost thou mean, stony cod? Thou wouldst, if thou couldst, a great deal worse than the giants of old intended to have done. Come hither, Billycullion. Whether wouldst thou be jealous without cause, or be a cuckold and know nothing of it? Neither the one nor the other, quoth Panurge, would I choose to be. But if I get an inkling of the matter, I will provide well enough, or there shall not be one stick of wood within 500 leagues about me whereof to make a cudgel. In good faith, Friar John, I speak now seriously unto thee. I think it will be my best not to marry. Hearken to what the bells do tell me, now that we are nearer to them. Do not marry, marry not, marry, marry not. If thou marry, thou wilt miscarry, carry. Thou'lt repent it, resent it, sent it. If thou marry, thou a cuckold, a cuckoo, cuckold thou shalt be. By the worthy wrath of God, I begin to be angry. This Campanilian oracle fretteth me to the guts. A March hare was never in such chafe as I am. Oh, how I am vexed! You monks and friars of the cowl-pated and hood-pulled fraternity, have you no remedy, nor salve against this malady of graffing horns in the head? Hath nature so abandoned humankind, and of her help left us so destitute, that married men cannot know how to sail through the seas of this mortal life, and be safe from the whirlpools, quicksands, rocks, and banks that lie amongst the coasts of Cornwall? Oh, I am well done with seas for a while, I tell you. I will, said Friar John, show thee a way, and teach thee an expedient means by means thereof. Thy wife shall never make thee a cuckold without thy knowledge and thine own consent. Do me the favour, I pray thee, quoth Panurge, my pretty, soft, downy cod. Tell it, Billy, tell it, I beseech thee. Take, quoth Friar John, Hans Carvel's ring upon thy finger, who was the king of Melinda's chief jeweller. Besides that, this Hans Carvel has a reputation of being very skilful and expert in the lapidary's profession. He was a studious, learned, and ingenious man, a scientific person, full of knowledge, a great philosopher, of a sound judgment, of a prime wit, good sense, clean-spirited, an honest creature, courteous, charitable, a giver of alms, and of a jovial humor, a boon companion, and a merry blade, if ever there was any in the world. He was somewhat gore-bellied, had a little shake in his head, and was in effect unwieldy of his body. In his old age he took to wife the bailiff of Concordat's daughter, young, fair, jolly, gallant, spruce, frisk, brisk, neat, feet, smirk, smug, combed, quaint, gay, fine, tricksy, trim, decent, proper, graceful, handsome, beautiful, comely, and kind, a little too much, to her neighbors and acquaintances. Hereupon it fell out, after the expiring of a scantling of weeks, that Master Carvel became as jealous as a tiger, and entered into a very profound suspicion that his newly married Kixie did keep a buttock stirring with others. To prevent which inconveniency, he did tell her many tragical stories of the total ruin of several kingdoms by adultery, did read unto her the legend of chaste wives, then made some lectures to her in the praise of the choice virtue of pudicity, and did present her with a book in commendation of conjugal fidelity, wherein the wickedness of all licentious women was odiously detested, and withal he gave her a chain enriched with pure oriental sapphires. Notwithstanding all this, he found her always more and more inclined to the reception of her neighbor Cope's mates, that day by day his jealousy increased. In sequel whereof, one night as he was lying by her, whilst in his sleep the rambling fantasies of the lecherous deportments of his wife did take up the cellules of his brain, he dreamt that he encountered with the devil, to whom he had discovered to the full the buzzing of his head and suspicion that his wife did tread her shoe awry. The devil, he thought, in his perplexity did for his comfort give him a ring, and therewithal did kindly put it on his middle finger, saying, Hans Carvel, I give thee this ring. Whilst thou carriest it upon that finger, thy wife shall never carnally be known by any other than thyself, without thy special knowledge and consent. Gramercy, quoth Hans Carvel, my lord devil, I renounce Mahomet if ever it shall come off my finger. The devil vanished, as is his custom, and then Hans Carvel, full of joy awakening, found that his middle finger was as far as it could reach within the what do I call it of his wife. I did forget to tell thee how his wife, as soon as she had felt the finger there, said in recoiling her buttocks, Off, yes, nay, tut, push, tush, lord, that is not the thing which should be put up in that place. With this, Hans Carvel thought that some pilfering fellow was about to take that ring from him. Is not this an infallible and sovereign antidote? Therefore, if thou wilt believe me, in imitation of this example, never fail to have continually the ring of thy wife's commodity upon thy finger. When that was said, their discourse and their way ended. Boo, that was something. Chapter 29. How Pantagruel convocated together a theologian, physician, lawyer, and philosopher for extricating Panurge out of the perplexity wherein he was. No sooner were they come into the royal palace, but they to the full made report unto Pantagruel of the success of their expedition, and showed him the response of Ramino Grobi. When Pantagruel had read it over and over again, the oftener he perused it, being the better pleased therewith, he said, in addressing his speech to Panurge, I have not as yet seen any answer framed to your demand, which affordeth me more contentment. For in this his succinct copy of verses, he summarily and briefly, yet fully enough expresseth how he would have us to understand that everyone in the prospect and enterprise of marriage ought to be his own carver, sole arbitrator of his proper thoughts, and from himself alone take counsel in the main and peremptory closure of what his determination should be, either in his assent to or dissent from it. Such always hath been my opinion to you, and when at first you spoke thereof to me, I truly told you this very same thing, but tacitly you scorned my advice, and would not harbor it within your mind. I know for certain, and therefore may I with the greater confidence utter my conception of it, that philauti, or self-love, is that which blinds your judgment and deceiveth you. Let us do otherwise, and that is this. Whatever we are or have consisteth in three things, the soul, the body, and the goods. Now, for the preservation of these three, there are three sorts of learned men ordained, each respectively to have care of that one which is recommended to his charge. Theologues are appointed for the soul, physicians for the welfare of the body, and lawyers for the safety of our goods. Not any more, am I right? Hence it is that my resolution to have on Sunday next with me at dinner a divine, a physician, and a lawyer, that with those three assembled thus, together we may see in every pointed particle confer at large of your perplexity. By Saint Picot, answered Panurge, we shall never do any good that way, I see it already. And you see yourself how the world is vilely abused, as when with a foxtail one claps another's breech to control him. We give our souls to keep to the theologues, who for the greater part are heretics. Our bodies we commit to the physicians, who never themselves take any physic. And then we entrust our goods to the lawyers, who never go to law against one another. You speak like a courtier, quoth Pantagruel. But the first point of your assertion is to be denied, for we daily see how good theologues make it their chief business, their whole and sole employment, by the deeds, their words, and writings, to extirpate errors and heresies out of the hearts of men, and in their stead profoundly plant the true and lively faith. The second point you spoke of I commend, for whereas the professors of the art give so good order to the prophylactic or conservative part of their faculty, in what concerneth their proper healths, that they stand in no need of making of the other branch, which is the curative or therapeutic, by medicaments. As for the third, I grant it to be true, for learned advocates and counsellors at law are so much taken up with the affairs of others in their consultations, pleadings, and such like patrocinations of those who are their clients, that they have no leisure to attend any controversies of their own. Therefore, on the next ensuing Sunday, let the divine be our goodly father Hippothede, the physician our honest master Rondibili, and our legist our friend Bridal Goose. Nor will it be, to my thinking, amiss that we enter into the Pythagoric field, and choose for an assistant for the three aforenamed doctors our ancient faithful acquaintance, the philosopher Trouillougain, especially seeing a perfect philosopher, such as is Trouillougain, is able to positively to resolve all whatsoever doubts you can propose. Carpalin, have you a care to have them here, all four, on Sunday next at dinner without fail. I believe, quoth Epistemon, that throughout the whole country, in all the corners thereof, you could not have pitched upon such other four, which I speak not so much in regard of the most excellent qualifications and accomplishments, wherewith all of them are endowed for the respective discharge and management of each his own vocation and calling, wherein, without all doubt and controversy, they are the paragons of the land and surpass all others. As for that Rondibili is married now, who before was not. Hippothede was not before, nor is yet. Bridal Goose was married once, but is not now. And Trouillougain is married now, who wedded was to another wife before. Sir, if it may stand with your good liking, I will ease Carpalin of some parcel of his labour, and invite Bridal Goose myself, with whom I of a long time have had a very intimate familiarity, and unto whom I am to speak on the behalf of a pretty hopeful youth who now studieth at Toulouse, under the learned virtuous Dr. Boissonnet. Do what you deem most expedient, quoth Pantagruel, and tell me if my recommendation can in anything be steadable for the promoval of the good of that youth, or otherwise serve for the bettering of the dignity and office of the worthy Boissonnet, whom I do so love and respect for one of the ablest and most sufficient in his way that anywhere are extant. Sir, I will use therein my best endeavours, and heartily bestir myself about it. Boo! I feel like this drink was extra potent, and I'm having a bit of a time at the moment. Let me gather my wits about me. And we can admire this picture in the interim. It's a Rondibili. He looks like a Rondibili. Oh, I have plenty of water. Thank you. I am well bewatered. Chapter 30. How the theologue Hippothede giveth counsel to Panurge in the matter and business of his nuptial enterprise. The dinner on the subsequent Sunday was no sooner made ready than that the aforenamed invited guests gave thereunto their appearance, all of them, Bridal Goose only excepted, who was the deputy governor of Fons-Baton. At the ushering in of the second service, Panurge, making a low reverence, spake thus: Gentlemen, the question I am to propound unto you shall be uttered in very few words. Should I marry or no? If my doubt herein be not resolved by you, I shall hold it altogether insolvable, as are the insobilia de Alatio. For all of you are elected, chosen, and culled out from amongst others, everyone in his own condition and quality, like so many picked peas on a carpet. The father Hippothede, in obedience to the bidding of Pantagruel, and with much courtesy to the company, answered exceedingly modestly after this manner: My friend, you are pleased to ask counsel of us, but first you must consult with yourself. Do you find any trouble or disquiet in your body by the importune stings and pricklings of the flesh? That I do, quoth Panurge, in a hugely strong and almost irresistible measure. Be not offended, I beseech you, good father, at the freedom of my expression. No, truly, friend, not I, quoth Hippothete. There is no reason what I should be displeased therewith. But in this carnal strife and debate of yours, have you obtained from God the gift and special grace of continency? In good faith not, quoth Panurge. My counsel to you in that case, my friend, is that you marry, quoth Hippothete, for you should rather choose to marry once than to burn still in fires of concupiscence. Whatever, you know that thing. Then Panurge, with a jovial heart and loud voice, cried out, That is spoken gallantly, without circumbilivaginating out about and about, and never hitting it in its centered point. Gramercy, my good father. In truth, I am resolved now to marry, and without fail I shall do it quickly. Wait for him to change his mind, folks. Just wait for it. I invite you to my wedding. By the body of a hen we shall make good cheer and be as merry as crickets. You shall wear the bridegroom's colors, and if we eat a goose, my wife shall not roast it for me. I will entreat you to lead up to the first dance of the bridesmaids, if it may please you to do me so much favor and honor. There resteth yet a small difficulty, a little scruple, yea, even less than nothing, whereof I humbly crave your resolution. Shall I be a cuckold, father, yea or no? By no means, answered Hippothete, will you be cuckolded, if it please God. Oh, the Lord help us now, quoth Panurge. Whither are we driven to, good folks? To the conditionals, which, according to the rules and precepts of the dialectic faculty, admit of all contradictions and impossibilities. If my transalpine mule had wings, my transalpine mule would fly, if it please God. I shall not be a cuckold, but I shall be a cuckold, if it please him. Good God! If this were a condition which I knew how to prevent, my hopes should be as high as ever, nor would I despair. But you here send me to God's privy council, to the closet of his little pleasures. You, my French countrymen, which is the way you take to go thither? My honest father, I believe it will be your best not to come to my wedding. The clutter and dingle-dangle noise of marriage guests will but disturb you, and break the serious fancies of your brain. You love repose, with solitude and silence. I really believe you will not come. And then you dance but indifferently, and would be out of countenance at the first entry. I will send you some good things to your chamber, together with the bride's favour, and there you may drink our health, if it may stand with your good liking. My friend, quoth Hippothete, take my words in the sense wherein I meant them, and do not misinterpret me. When I tell you, if it please God, do I to you any wrong therein? Is it an ill expression? Is it a blaspheming clause, or reserve any way scandalous unto the world? Do not we thereby honor the Lord God Almighty, Creator, Protector, and Conserver of all things? Is not that a mean whereby we do acknowledge him to be the sole giver of all whatsoever is good? Do not we in that manifest our faith, that we believe all things to depend upon his infinite and incomprehensible bounty, and that without him nothing can be produced, nor after its production be of any value, force, or power, without the concurring aid and favor of his assisting grace? Is it not a canonical and authentic exception, worthy to be premised to all our undertakings? Is it not expedient that what we propose unto ourselves be still referred to what shall be disposed of by the sacred will of God, unto which all things must acquiesce into the heavens as well as on the earth? Is that not verily a sanctifying of his holy name? My friend, you shall not be a cuckold, if it please God, nor shall we need to despair of the knowledge of his good will and pleasure herein, as if it were such an abstruse and mysteriously hidden secret that for the clear understanding thereof it were necessary to consult with those of his celestial privy council, or expressly make a voyage unto the Empyrean chamber where order is given for the effectuating of his most holy pleasures. The great God hath done us this good, that he hath declared and revealed them to us openly and plainly, and described them in the Holy Bible. There will you find that you shall never be a cuckold, that is to say, your wife shall never be a strumpet. If you make choice of one of a commendable extraction, descended of honest parents, and instructed in all piety and virtue, such a one as hath not at any time haunted or frequented the company or conversation of those that are corrupt and depraved manners. One loving and fearing God, who taketh a singular delight in drawing near to him by faith and the cordial observing of his sacred commandments. And finally, one who, standing in awe of the divine majesty of the Most High, will be loth to offend him, and lose the favorable kindness of his grace through any defect of faith or transgression against the ordinances of his holy law, wherein adultery is the most rigorously forbidden, and a close adherence to her husband alone most strictly and severely enjoined. Basically, if you want a wife that's not going to cuckold you, find one who's not going to cuckold you. Duh. Yea, in such sort that she is to cherish, serve, and love him above anything else, next to God, that meriteth to be beloved. In the interim, for the better schooling of her in these instructions, and that the wholesome doctrine of a matrimonial duty may take the deeper root in her mind, you must needs carry yourself so on your part, and your behavior is to be such, that you are to go before her in a good example, by entertaining her unfeignedly with a conjugal amity, by continually approving yourself in all your words and actions a faithful and discreet husband, and by living, not only at home and privately with your own household and family, but in the face also of all men and open view of the world, devoutly, virtuously, and chastely, as you would have her on her side to deport and to demean herself towards you, as becomes a goodly, loyal, and respectful wife, who maketh conscience to keep inviolable the tie of a matrimonial oath. For as that looking-glass is not the best which is the most decked with gold and precious stones, but that which representeth to the eye the liveliest shapes of objects set before it, even so that the wife should not be the most esteemed who is richest and of the noblest race, but she who, fearing God, conforms herself nearest unto the humor of her husband. Consider how the moon doth not borrow her light from Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, or any other of the planets, nor yet from any of those splendid stars which are set in the spangled firmament, but from her husband only, the bright sun, which she receiveth from him more or less according to the matter of his aspect in variously bestowed eradications. Just so should you be a pattern to your wife in virtue, goodly zeal, and true devotion, that by your radiance and darting on her the aspect of an exemplary goodness, she, in your imitation, may outshine the luminaries of all other women. To this effect, you daily must implore God's grace to the protection of you both. You would have me then, quoth Panurge, twisting the whiskers of his beard on either side with the thumb and forefinger of his left hand, to espouse and take to wife the most prudent, frugal woman described by Solomon. Without all doubt, she is dead, and truly to my best remembrance I never saw her. The Lord forgive me. Nevertheless, I thank you, father. Eat this slice of marchpane. It will help your digestion. Then shall you be presented with a cup of claret hippocras, which is right healthful and stomachal. Let us proceed. I mean, this is... yeah. You mean I have to stop being a prick? I can't. Chapter 31. How the physician, Rondibili, counselleth Panurge. Panurge, continuing his discourse, said, The first word which was spoken by him who gelded the lubberly quaffing monks of Sauceniac, after that he had unstoned Friar Caldoret, which was this, to the rest. In like manner I say, to the rest. Therefore I beseech you, my good master Rondibili, should I marry or not? By the raking pace of my mule, quoth Rondibili, I know not what answer to make to this problem of yours. You say that you feel in you the pricking stings of sensuality, by which you are stirred up to venery. I find in our faculty of medicine, and we have founded our opinion therein, that the deliberate resolution and final decision of the ancient Platonics, that carnal concupiscence is cooled and quelled 5 several ways. First, by the means of wine. Excuse me. I shall easily believe that, quoth Friar John, for when I am well whittled with the juice of the grape, I care for nothing else, so I may sleep. When I say, quoth Rondibili, that wine abateth lust, my meaning is, wine immoderately taken. For by intemperancy proceeding from the excessive drinking of strong liquor, there is brought upon the body of such a swill-down boozer a chillness in the blood, a slacking in the sinews, a dissipation of the generative seed, a numbness and inhibition of the senses, with a perverse wryness and convulsion of the muscles, which are all great lets and impediments to the act of generation. And in this era we call it whiskey dick. Hence it is that Bacchus, the god of bibbers, tipplers, and drunkards, is most commonly painted beardless and clad in a woman's habit, as a person altogether effeminate, or like a libbed eunuch. Wine, nevertheless, taken moderately, worketh quite contrary effects, as is implied by the old proverb, which saith that Venus takes cold when not accompanied with Ceres and Bacchus. This opinion is of great antiquity, as appeareth by the testimony of Diodorus the Cilician, and confirmed by Pausanias, and universally held amongst the Lampsatians that Don Priapus was the son of Bacchus and Venus. Secondly, the fervency of lust is abated by certain drugs, plants, herbs, and roots, which make the taker cold, maleficiated, unfit for, and unable to perform the act of generation, as hath been often experimented in the water lily, Heraclea, Agnus castus, willow twigs, hemp stalks, woodbine, honeysuckle, tamarisk, chaste tree, mandrake, bennet, kekbugloss, the skin of a hippopotam, and many other such, which by convenient doses proportioned to the peccant humor and constitution of the patient, being duly and seasonably received within the body, what by their elementary virtues on the one side and peculiar properties on the other, to either benumb, mortify, and beclumps with cold the prolific sements, or scatter and disperse the spirits which ought to have gone along with and conducted the sperm to the places destined and appointed for its reception. Or lastly, shut up, stop, and obstruct the ways, passages, and conduits through which the seed should have been expelled, evacuated, and ejected. We have none, nevertheless, of those ingredients which, being of contrary operation, heat the blood, bend the nerves, unite the spirits, quicken the senses, strengthen the muscles, and thereby rouse up, provoke, excite, and enable a man to the vigorous accomplishment of the feat of amorous dalliance. I have no need of those, quoth Panurge. God be thanked, and you, my good master. Howsoever, I pray you, take no exception nor offence at these my words, for what I have said was not out of any ill will I did bear to you. The Lord he knows. Thirdly, the ardor of lechery is very much subdued and mated by frequent labor and continual toiling. For by painful exercises and laborious working so great a dissolution is brought upon the whole body, that the blood, which runneth alongst the channels of the veins thereof for the nourishment and alimentation of each of its members, hath neither time, leisure, nor power to afford the seminal recidation, or superfluity of the third concoction, which nature what a word for that, which nature most carefully reserves for the conservation of the individual, whose preservation she most heedfully regardeth than the propagating of the species and the multiplication of humankind. Whence it is that Diana is said to be chaste, because she is never idle, but always busied about her hunting. For the same reason was a camp or leaguer of old called castrum, as if they would have said castum, because the soldiers, wrestlers, runners, throwers of the bar, and other such like athletic champions are, as usually seen in a military circumvallation, do incessantly travail in turmoil, and are in a perpetual stir and agitation. To this purpose, Hippocrates also writeth in his book De Aere Aqua Elosis, that in his time there were people in Scythia as impotent as eunuchs in the discharge of a Venerian exploit, because that without any cessation, pause, or respite, they were never off from horseback, or otherwise assiduously employed in some troublesome and molesting drudgery. On the other part, in opposition and repugnancy hereto, the philosophers say that idleness is the mother of luxury. When it was asked Ovid why Aegisthus became an adulterer, he made no other answer but this, because he was idle. Who were able to rid the world of loitering and laziness might easily frustrate and disappoint Cupid of all his designs, aims, engines, and devices, and so disable and appall him that his bow, quiver, and darts should from henceforth be a mere needless load and burden to him, for that it could not then lie in his power to strike or wound any of either sex with all the arms he had. He is not, I believe, so expert an archer that he can hit the cranes flying in the air, or yet the young stags skipping through the thickets, as the Parthians know well how to do. That is to say, people moiling, stirring, and hurrying up and down, restless and without repose. He must have those hushed, still, quiet, lying at a stay, lither and full of ease, whom he is able, though his mother help him, to touch, much less to pierce with all his arrows. In confirmation hereof, Theophrastus, being asked on a time what kind of beast or thing he judged a toyish wanton love to be, he made answer that it was a passion of idle and sluggish spirits. From which pretty description of tickling love tricks that of Diogenes' hatching was not very discrepant, when he defined lechery the occupation of folks destitute of all other occupation. For this cause the Ciconian engraver Canachus, being desirous to give us to understand that sloth, drowsiness, negligence, and laziness were the prime guardians and governesses of ribaldry, made this statue of Venus not standing, as other stonecutters had used to, but sitting. Fourthly, the tickling pricks of incontinency are blunted by an eager study, for from thence proceedeth an incredible resolution of the spirits, that oftentimes there do not remain so many behind as may suffice to push and thrust forwards the generative resudation to the places thereto appropriated, and therewithal inflate the cavernous nerve whose office is to ejaculate the moisture for the propagation of human progeny. Lest you should think it is not so, be pleased but to contemplate a little the form, fashion, and carriage of a man exceedingly earnestly set upon some learned meditation, and deeply plunged therein, and you shall see how all the arteries of his brains are stretched forth and bent like the string of a crossbow, the more promptly, dexterously, and copiously to supeditate, furnish and supply him with store of spirits sufficient to replenish and fill up the ventricles, seats, tunnels, mansions, receptacles, and cellules of the common sense, of the imagination, apprehension, and fancy, of the ratiocination, arguing, and resolution, as likewise of the memory, recordation, and remembrance, and with great alacrity, nimbleness, and agility to run, pass, and course from the one to the other, and through those pipes, windings, and conduits which to skillful anatomists are perceivable at the end of the wonderful net, where all the arteries close in a terminating point, which arteries taking the rise and origin from the leps capsule of the heart, bring through several circuits, ambages, and fructuosities, the vital, to subtilize and refine them to the ethereal purity of animal spirits. Nay, in such a studiously musing person you may espy so extravagant raptures as one as if it were out of himself, that all his natural faculties for that time will seem to be suspended from each their proper charge and office, and his exterior senses to be at a stand. In a word, you cannot otherwise choose than to think that he is by an extraordinary ecstasy quite transported out of what he was, or should be, and that Socrates did not speak improperly when he said that philosophy was nothing else but a meditation upon death. This possibly is the reason why Democritus deprived himself of the sense of seeing, prizing at a much lower rate the loss of his sight than the diminution of his contemplations, which he frequently had found disturbed by the vagrant flying out strayings of his unsettled and roving eyes. Therefore is it that Pallas, the goddess of wisdom, tutoress and guardianess of such as are diligently studious and painfully industrious, is and hath been still accounted a virgin. The muses upon the same consideration are esteemed perpetual maids, and the graces, for the like reason, have been held to continue in a sempiternal pudicity. Different word. Wow. Okay. I remember to have read that Cupid, on a time being asked of his mother Venus why he did not his sultan set upon the muses, his answer was that he found them so fair, so sweet, so fine, so neat, so wise, So learned, so modest, so discreet, so courteous, so virtuous, and so continuously busied and employed, one in the speculation of the stars, another in the supputation of numbers, the third in the dimension of geometrical quantities, the fourth in the composition of heroic poems, the fifth in the jovial interludes of a comic strain, the sixth in the stately gravity of a tragic vein, the seventh in the melodious disposition of musical arts, the eighth in the completest manner of writing histories and books on all sorts of subjects, and the ninth in the mysteries, secrets, and curiosities of all sciences, faculties, disciplines, and arts whatsoever, whether liberal or mechanic, that approaching near unto them he unbended his bow, shut his quiver, and extinguished his torch, through mere shame and fear that by mischance he might do them some hurt or prejudice. Which done, he thereafter put off the fillet wherewith his eyes were bound to look them in the face, and to hear their melody and poetic odes. There took he the greatest pleasure in the world, that many times he was transported with their beauty and pretty behavior, and charmed asleep by the harmony. So far was he from assaulting them or interrupting their studies. Under this article may be comprised what Hippocrates wrote in the aforecited treatise concerning the Scythians, as also that in a book of his entitled Of Breeding and Production, where he hath affirmed all such men to be unfit for generation as have their parotid arteries cut, whose situation is beside the ears, for the reason given already when I was speaking of the resolution of the spirits, and of that spiritual blood whereof the arteries are the sole and proper receptacles, and that likewise he doth maintain a large portion of the peristatic liquor to issue and descend from the brains and backbone. Fifthly, by the too frequent reiteration of the act of venere. There did I wait for you, quoth Panurge, and shall willingly apply it to myself, whilst anyone that pleaseth me may, for me, make use of any of the four preceding. That is the very same thing, quoth Friar John, which Father Celino, prior of the Saint Victor at Marseille, calleth by the name of maceration and taming of the flesh. I am of the same opinion, and so was the hermit of Saint Radegonde, a little above Chinon. For, quoth he, the hermits of Thebes can no more aptly or expediently macerate and bring down the pride of their bodies, daunt and mortify their lecherous sensuality, or depress and overcome the stubbornness and rebellion of the flesh, than by duffling and fanfreluching it 25 or 30 times a day. Wow! I see Panurge, quoth Rondibilly, neatly featured and proportioned in all the members of his body, of a good temperament in his humours, well complexioned in his spirits, of a competent age, in an opportune time, and of a reasonably forward mind to be married. Truly, if he encounter with a wife of the like nature, temperament, and constitution, he may get upon her children worthy of some transpontine monarchy, and the sooner he marry it will be the better for him, and the more conducible for his profit, if he would see and have his children in his own time well provided for. Sir, my worthy master, quoth Panurge, I will do it. Do not you doubt thereof, and that quickly enough, I warrant you. Nevertheless, whilst you were busied in the uttering of your learned discourse, this flea which I have in mine ear hath tickled me more than ever. I retain you in the number of my festival guests, and promise you that we shall not want for mirth and good cheer enough, yea, over and above the ordinary rate. And if it may please you, desire your wife to come along with you, together with her she-friends and neighbours. That is to be understood, and there shall be fair play. Okay. I'm not willing to go through all this chapter. I'm having kind of a hard time, so this feels like a really good time for me to stop, because heavens to Betsy. And well, maybe we could finally put to bed whether or not this guy is going to do it or not do it, because I'm with you, and I'm of like mind. I'm really sick of it. It's like, come on. I want to get to the part where, like, the man, like, blows up a bear with Flintstones. Yeah, you got me there. Heaven to Betsy C. Or would it be Bet C? Anyway. So, in the words of Ms. Goatfish, goodbye, world. And we'll do this again next week.